The NBA constantly goes through phases of dominance by different styles of players. When only the best 450 players in the world can get spots in the league, there is going to be a lot of variance. Some generations develop more guards, some develop more big men. Usually this is pretty evenly balanced, but occasionally there will be a serious lack of certain types of players. Right now in the NBA, there is probably a slight lack of wings, as every team would give an arm and a leg for more wings who can shoot and play defense. But this problem is likely to continue to exist for a long time. Guys who can play this position usually have to be at least 6'6", and there just aren't that many people born with this height and the athleticism and dedication required to play in the NBA. And the same requirement applies even more to the NBA big man. They say that you can't teach height, and it is true. There are only a very limited number of people born with the height required to play big man in the NBA, and this limited talent pool could be what leads to there being more fluctuation in the dominance of big men in the NBA. During the 90s and early 2000s, we were in one of the most big man dominant eras ever. Shaq, Hakeem, Patrick Ewing, Kareem, David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and many more dominated the league. Aside from the freakish teams with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, if you wanted to win a championship, you basically needed an elite big guy. And heck, even the Bulls had Dennis Rodman, who while severely undersized, had the effect and the impact of a great big man. But following the retirement of a lot of these guys, a decline in the big man stocks of the league began. This really became apparent following 2010. Andrew Bynum slowly fell out of the league due to injuries and attitude. Tim Duncan and Pau Gasol were being haunted by the ghost of old age and could no longer dominate on a night-to-night basis. Greg Oden, a guy who looked set to take the mantle of most dominant big, would fall to some of the saddest injuries, and then Dwight Howard would suffer a back injury and never quite be the same. This saw the league in a position where teams dominated by wings and guards, leading their teams to championships. The Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers teams, led by LeBron James, didn't have an amazing traditional big and relied on shooting and the individual brilliance of James, Wade, Bosh, Irving, and Kevin Love. The same applies for the Warriors with their league-defining wealth of talent. The only exception was maybe the Spurs in 2014. But by that time, Tim Duncan was more of a piece in a team than the dominant force he once was. The Spurs relied on ball movement, shooting, and all of their pieces to win that ring. The big man stocks were truly low. People might argue that this was just the game changing, but I would disagree. There was clearly still room for big men as the Warriors would give run to Zaza, the Heat to Joel Anthony, a returned Greg Oden, and an old Chris Anderson, and I would bet if they had a Patrick Ewing or a Hakeem, they would play in big minutes and he would have dominated. It wasn't a style thing, it was a talent thing. At one point, a guy like Roy Hibbert would be declared as the best big man in the Eastern Conference. Roy Hibbert. This was around 2013, and at the same time, the best big in the West was a very young DeMarcus Cousins. There were still players such as DeAndre Jordan who were playing important roles, but DJ couldn't lead a team like the great bigs of old. He was an athletic piece that benefited from the NBA's growing love of pick and roll and had an insatiable appetite for rebounds. I remember around this time, numerous articles were written about the death of the big man. People thought that the stocks were low and that they might never replenish. But this failed to recognise that when some people zig, sometimes the best way to go is zag. With most NBA teams having very few big men, if a dominant one came along, they would be exceptionally tough to stop. Most guys in the NBA around 2013 to 2016 had never had to try and stop a Shaq, a Hakeem, or a David Robinson. And this weakness is getting exploited this season and to an extent last season as well. The variance has turned the other way, and there is currently more young big man talent than any period since the 90s in the league. Hell, it could be the most talent ever present in the NBA at the position. You have players such as Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Anthony Davis who are absolutely dominant for their team and are clear first options. Then guys such as Clint Capella and Rudy Gobert who have taken the DeAndre Jordan role to new heights by providing fantastic positional defense to go alongside the dunks, rebounds, and blocked shots. And underneath these established players is a huge amount of young talent just waiting for their turn. Kristaps Porzingis, Miles Turner, DeAndre Ayton, Andre Drummond, and a few others have shown the potential to really become a star player for their teams in the future. Plus, I haven't even mentioned some of the older guys who are still playing important roles for their teams. LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, Al Horford, and Marc Gasol are still plugging away. But instead of these guys being the best bigs, they've been pushed into the shadows a bit by the new generation. Those that combine the freakish size and athleticism of the past centers with all of the skills and shooting of the modern NBA. 7-footers who can Eurostep and guys who are 7'3" and can hit a crossover into a pull-up jump shot now exist. Welcome to the renaissance of the NBA big man. And I want to take a look at some of these bigs and what makes them so special, as well as project whether or not they will reach the championship heights of the past great big men. And I wanted to start with Nikola Jokic. Jokic has long been a favourite of mine, and I made a video earlier in the year predicting that he would lead the Nuggets to the top of the West and be a top 5 MVP candidate. But I remember watching the Nuggets when Jusuf Nurkic was still considered their next best thing. And for some reason I found myself enjoying the game more when their young rookie who was slightly overweight was on the court. He looked awkward. He looked like he didn't belong. But he was out there making wicked passes, getting rebounds, and hitting soft hooks and floaters around the rim. It was strange. The eye test told you he looked like he didn't belong in the league, but then his effectiveness, moves, and stats told you he did. A Reddit user named EG1400 would make all these posts about how the advanced stats pointed to Jokic as the next great big man and one of the best offensive players ever. He made so many comments and posts about it that the Reddit moderators banned him from the NBA subreddit. Well, they look incredibly dumb, and his statistics were vindicated. Jokic has developed into one of the clear best big men in the league, and his offensive game is one of the best for any big man ever. Jokic has basically every shot in the book, and his touch on all of them is insane. He can shoot from deep, fading away in the post, and pulling up at the free throw line off of the dribble. Then he can also take people off the dribble and has a fantastic post game to create space for himself inside the paint. Jokic has some of the softest and most accurate touch on his hooks and floaters, and he makes some shots with his defender all over him that leave you wondering how. And this doesn't even mention his touch on offensive rebounds. Most NBA big men use their athleticism to dominate the offensive glass. They rise up, collect the ball, and slam it back home. Not Jokic. He doesn't possess that type of bounce. He simply reaches up and gets his fingers to the ball before manipulating it into the rim. It's an art and a joy to watch, as is his passing. His passing is by far and away the best of any big man in the league, and perhaps maybe ever. This allows him to be the centerpiece of the Nuggets offense, and they run everything through him. In the post, they leverage the fact he needs to be doubled and run cutters all around him. Jokic is so good he can hit passes like a point guard, and as soon as teams double, he is looking to dime. And on the defensive end, Jokic is nowhere near as bad as he is made out to be sometimes. The Nuggets have implemented a defensive scheme where he can drop back on pick and rolls. They've also instructed him to stay down and not go for blocks as much. This all allows him to contest shots and protect the rim as much as possible without giving up rebounding position. The Nuggets don't protect the rim as well as other teams, but they are a great rebounding team and it boosts their defensive efficiency immensely. This season, the Nuggets are a great playoff team. They could honestly beat anyone with Jokic. He's the kind of player that will figure teams out over a series and become more dangerous the longer it goes. And the Nuggets have the pieces around him to succeed. The future is bright for the big fella. Another elite big man with a very bright future is none other than Joel Embiid. On appearance alone, Embiid is essentially the opposite of Jokic. He's one of the most athletic players in the league, and he uses this and his giant frame to dominate in the paint. The Sixers love to start games by just dumping the ball down low and letting him go to work. He takes 2 dribbles and backs down his opponents, and if they aren't on the floor, they definitely aren't close enough to contest his array of hooks and layups. Joel is more though than just raw size and strength. Like Shaq before him, he has amazing footwork. He pivots like a ballerina in the post and frustrates the hell out of defenders. Just when guys think they have made him settle and jump to contest the shot, Embiid brings the ball back down and slides under them for an easy layup. And the pain doesn't stop in the paint. Joel sets amazing screens at the top of the key, and like Jokic, he can go both ways. He can fade out for a 3-point shot, or he can roll to the basket. Embiid himself has said that he prefers not to shoot threes and stay inside instead. And I agree. When he rolls to the basket, it is devastating on defenses. And even if the Sixers don't get the best shot out of it, he will sometimes end up in a great post position or for the offensive rebound. But I do think that it is great that he can mix things up and shoot threes. It helps with the Sixers' spacing, and it forces defenders to keep guessing which way he's going to go. And Embiid is also a good passing big, just not on the level of Jokic. But he is getting better and better at passing out of double teams. He's also fantastic at executing dribble handoffs, and this has been his pet play with JJ Redick for a long time. This play is made even more effective by the huge size of Embiid. Defenders seriously struggle to get around him and contest or stop Redick from shooting. This is incredibly valuable and helps add layers to teams' offenses, something incredibly necessary for the Sixers due to the fact that Simmons can't shoot yet, a problem that I believe is overblown for the record. And the beauty of Embiid is that he is an amazing defensive player as well. Joel is one of the best rim protectors in the league, and he protects it with enormous ferocity. Embiid can also guard on the perimeter for short bursts after switches, and has great anticipation on steals and blocks. And then when the possession ends in a missed shot, he hits the boards with ferocity, or boxes out his man and lets Simmons or Tobias Harris fly through for the rebound. The 76ers are set for a deep playoff run, and I like them a lot this year. In Embiid, they have something that Boston, Toronto, and Milwaukee don't have. A gigantic, skilled, and competitive behemoth. And if they don't make it through the East this year, I firmly believe that Embiid and Simmons will lead the Sixers to the NBA Finals at some point. Maybe in a matchup against Jokic. But regardless of whether or not this happens, the renaissance of big men is well and truly here. And I didn't even get to talk in depth on the other elite level bigs in the league. But don't worry, I make plenty of NBA videos, and if you enjoyed this one, make sure you subscribe for those. And leave a like and hit the notification bell also. And let me know in the comments who your favourite big man is from each era and why.